Welcome everybody to another episode of Kick and Make Up. I'm your host, the American Hybrid, Nick Cunningham. With me, as always, is Jeremy J.D. Dorsey.
Yes, sir. Little pound.
What's going on, man?
Back again.
I'm ready to go. Kind of an off week in MMA, but we definitely found some things to talk about. Though I didn't have to look hard because there's always things going on, whether there's a fight card or not. So we've got a lot of good segments today. It is Tuesday, June 27th. That's when we're recording this. So if anything happens right now and we don't talk about it, it's because we're recording.
Right.
So, you're on the Kick and Make Up show. Let me go through some of the particulars and let you know what we are, where you can find us, how to get a hold of us. We've got our own website, www.kickandmakeup.com, where we've got all the shows that we've done. This is the 5th episode, so you can check out the other 4. Comment on those. Let us know what you think. Pick some new topics for us to talk about next week. We really want to make this show interactive with you guys. You can also email us at kickandmakeup@gmail.com. And also we've got our Facebook page, which if you go to Facebook, obviously you go to the search engine or the search bar and type in Kick and Makeup. Request to be in the group. We click you right in. There's no questions asked. You're in. You get to partake in some of the polls we have. We had some good discussion back and forth with some of our viewers last week.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely good to get on there. And like I said last week, some of the shows, the UFCs, and if we're able to watch them or be there, we do live cage side updates. Even if we're not there and we can catch a whole card live, we try to update throughout the whole show. So if you like Facebook, go that way. If you like Twitter, we've got a couple ways to do it there. We've got our @KickandMakeUp Twitter handle, and also mine @HybridMMA. So 4 avenues to get a hold of us. Like I said, we've had some good stuff going on before, so make sure to get involved in some of that, because that's why we do the show for you guys. Here's the way the show goes. Every week we break it down in 3 segments. We've got the high kick, which is the best, most interesting thing going on in MMA, usually on a positive note. The low kick is the most talked about, maybe in a negative light. And then also our That's Some BullKick rant, where we just kind of go off for 10 minutes on the oddities of MMA and something random weird going on. And, that is definitely becoming my favorite segment. It is my favorite segment.
Oh, yeah, by far, man, by far. It's fun. You get to kind of blast your opinion out there. It might not be something that everybody agrees with. I mean, frequently we agree, but sometimes we don't. And,
right.
Today will be one of those days where we don't agree on the bull kick topic. So I think it makes it a little more spicy, a little more interesting when we don't agree. So that'll be a fun discussion in a little bit.
Exactly, man. So that is our 3 segments, and with saying that, we're gonna go right into our first segment, which is this week's high kick. This week's high kick goes to Bellator's new show, Fight Master, and I don't know, when I was doing the notes and talking to you, I was just like, Bellator gets the high kick for not sucking, for not being another MMA show that is exactly like The Ultimate Fighter. Because there's not that many organizations, and I would imagine it'd be hard to have a reality show in MMA that's not exactly like The Ultimate Fighter.
Right.
But Bellator actually did it. I watched it on Wednesday night. It's going to be on Wednesday nights. And so I imagine this first one had a few more viewers than it's going to have during the season, because it did follow one of the Bellator cards, the Summer Series events, and that's not going to be the way of it every Wednesday. But I don't know, after watching it, it was a good show, and I'll just break down. I don't know if you got a chance to watch a little bit of it.
I was able to check it out.
What'd you think about it, man?
It was good. I really like their format, as opposed to, well, not really as opposed to, but it's sort of since you have 4 coaches, it kind of gives you kind of get certain coaches who are going to go after certain types of fighters, and you kind of just hope to see that those guys, okay, this guy has, he's good with stand-up, so I'm going to hope that he goes with this coach. And sometimes it goes the way that you think it's going to go, sometimes it doesn't, and you look at it like, wow, why would he be with that guy? So it's kind of different, and I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And some of the fighters are pretty interesting too, and it's just not the Ultimate Fighter clone. Like
Exactly.
I was sort of thinking it was going to be like I saw some of the commercials and stuff, and even though I knew that the format was going to be slightly different, I thought it was going to be sort of like a Ultimate Fighter knockoff, but it's really not. It's interesting in its own right.
Right. And for you guys actually that haven't seen it, let me just break down a little bit how the show format goes. It's a show where there's 4 coaches, and the 4 coaches they picked were Frank Shamrock, who is a legend in the sport, been around for 20-some years, and did UFC. Was one of the first UFC, I believe, welterweight champions when they did their divisions, when they went to weight classes, then went over to Strikeforce and was a commentator on Strikeforce. So he's done a lot of different things, was one of the coaches for the IFL also. I remember him there. So he has been around for a long time. They picked Joe Warren, who's actually still a Bellator fighter right now. So he's one of the younger coaches on the team. And he's one of those guys that was a fighter and now I think just starting to coach. So he's probably one of the fresh faces or fresh legs, whatever you want to call it, of the coaching industry. They've got Randy Couture, who obviously needs no introduction on there. There was a big controversy with him going over to Bellator, still being in the UFC contract, so that was a huge thing. But he's one of the coaches. And then Greg Jackson, which is also the best coach, I think, right now in the industry. And so what happens is, even on the elimination fights, the 2 fighters fought, and the winner was brought out in front of the 4 coaches and got to ask the coaches questions of why do you want me to be on your team, and what can you bring to my game? And so that was interesting right there in itself, of kind of the question and answer. And then also the fighter got to pick the team that he wanted to be on. So there, like you said, there was times where you were watching and you knew that one guy should have go this way, but then he chose this coach. And I was very surprised that everybody didn't want to pick Greg Jackson.
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of people that picked Frank Shamrock, and there was a few people that went on Team Warren and Couture, and so even the coaches sometimes said that's not who they wanted on their team, but that's just going to make it interesting too, I think, this season, to see what they can do. And I know there's going to be some surprises. And I liked the format. I liked the 4 coaches would definitely. I mean, Frank Shamrock, that was out of nowhere when they picked him to be the coach.
Yeah.
But I forgot that he's been around the game forever. He's seen a lot of things. He knows the ins and outs of the sport, whereas Joe Warren knows the last 5 to 10 years. So you're gonna get a lot more in that respect from Frank Shamrock than you are of Joe Warren, and it's a good mixture of guys. And like I said, Spike right now needs to do everything they can to capitalize on Bellator being on Spike. So the reality show was just inevitable that they were going to do that. I don't know. I think it's a good thing. I think it opened up a lot of eyes. I know a lot of the things that I was reading on the internet. A lot of people that were kind of downing the show were very surprised at it, including myself. So I will definitely, me and you were going to watch it anyway every Wednesday, whether it was good or bad. But I'm definitely interested in coming back and watching it again. So.
Yeah, I really like how they made the choice up to the fighter, as opposed to like what you would normally see, where just like it is the example of Ultimate Fighter, where the coaches sat and picked who they wanted. So you kind of get the fighters' personalities and what they think would be best for them coming out when they decided to choose their coaches. And some of them, like I said, made no sense. Just trying to think about it, but hey, they see something in that coach that they like, so they went with them. And I really like the format, and it kind of gives the coaches an opportunity to shine as well, because they each sort of bring different things to the table. It's not like none of these guys are. I guess Couture really is, but I was gonna say none of these guys are really active fighters. So it's kind of like these guys. This is what they do, or this is what they're doing now. And, they're not really focused on fighting, whereas when you have the Ultimate Fighter, you got 2 guys who are eventually going to fight. So, they're trying to sell stuff too, and, they're trying to sell themselves too, whereas I think this is, these guys are really just trying to be coaches, and, you might be able to see them invest a little bit more into their guys too. And then you only have 4 guys on the team, right? So, I think it's a little bit easier to focus when you only got, 4 guys to deal with, as opposed to the Ultimate Fighter, where you got, what is it, like 8 or 8 or 9.
8 or 9, yeah, a little more. I feel like it was, yeah.
There's a ton, and it's kind of hard to focus on individual guys when you got a gym full of people. So, I think I really like this format. It'll be interesting to see how it develops from here on out. But like I said, I'll definitely be tuning in. I suggest that anybody else who's a fight fan should tune in as well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch. My true test for this show is going to be when they move into the house. The first couple seasons of The Ultimate Fighter, we're getting everybody getting drunk and doing pranks and blah, 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 all that crap that I think they've finally gotten away from a little bit in the last seasons. So I want to see if this Bellator's Fight Master is going to have to evolve like that. If it does, it's really going to lose a lot of viewers.
Right.
So I hope that this batch is kind of past all that point and they're here to fight, and that prank crap was stupid to watch.
Right, and there's a lot of, I guess, a more serious tone to it. And you can kind of tell that. I mean, it's funny parts, but there's definitely more of a serious tone to it. And I definitely think that's the right route to take, because there's a lot of people who want to see the hardcore sort of stuff and what these guys really have to go through, and that they are earning these spots, and it's not just like somebody coming in off the street and just doing whatever because it's not the UFC. So I enjoyed it. I can't wait to watch some more.
Yeah, me too. So congratulations to Bellator for getting the Kick and Make Up High Kick of the Week, and we shall see what happens later in the season. With that being said, our low kick of the week goes to Dana White, and you know how he always gets on the mic and no filter every day for Dana White. He goes on, keeping with the Bellator theme, and he was quoted last week to, I believe it was MMA Junkie or MMA Mania, that Bellator is never going to be as good as us. I feel like we should have a no shit segment, because, and let me explain why I say that. I don't think they're trying to be right now. I don't think I think they know that the UFC is the powerhouse, the alpha brand right now, and I don't think Bellator, just because they're branching out and doing the show, and they're bringing in Rampage and different things like that. I don't think that anybody at Bellator is still thinking like, ha 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 ha, we're gonna take over the UFC and be bigger than them. So for Dana White to come out and say that, even though I know he says things like that, it kind of bothered me a little bit. I felt like it was a bullying statement.
Yeah, and there's one thing to be confident in your brand, and I think this sort of goes without stating that they're not as good as them. And but part of me says too that I like an underdog, and I like that having that, if I was Bellator, having that number 2 position, especially if they can hold it, because the UFC has this roster of fighters, but there are tons of other people who are good as well, and all it really takes is 2-3 names, or 2-3 fighters to come up, and you have the show, and maybe you're going to be able to develop some stars that way. And if you are able to do that, if you have those guys, there's no reason that you can't be successful like that. And then for him to shit on them and be like, they're never going to be as good as us, and never say never. And I think that's one thing that I kind of appreciate. I like Dana, and I like his brashness at times, and his confidence. But sometimes I think you need to sort of take a step back and be a little bit humble, and you can still pat your opponent on the back after the fight.
Yeah.
They're winning right now, so no reason to shit on them and say they're never going to be as good as us, when you never know what's going to happen. I mean, anything could change.
Right. And we've seen that. And we've seen the recipe before with the UFC. I think me and you have talked about this, that they, once they start to get into this zone of, that's nerves, I believe, talking. And when Dana White gets nervous, he goes and pretty much buys the company within a year and absorbs them in. And I have to believe that everybody fighting in Bellator, if offered a UFC contract, would take the UFC contract, which I get. So it's almost like you see this talk, and then I know within 6 months from now, it's going to be Dana White offers $2 billion to buy that, and then absorbs them into it. And I don't know, as a fight fan and as a reporter and just anything and above, I like seeing a few different companies. Like, I understand the UFC's got the best people most of the time. But I remember when UFC and the WEC were kind of going back and forth. I really liked the WEC cards.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, and for a while they were more enjoyable than some of the UFC cards. They were, I mean, that's when like we've talked before, the Pettises and Hendersons, and they came from WEC, and for a while that's what was going on. Dana was saying stuff about the WEC, and then bought them. So I hope that doesn't happen soon. I hope he lets Bellator just be Bellator for a while and do their thing before he goes and buys them up and absorbs them. And then what we're left with, Nick Diaz's new organization, War. I mean, I don't know. You got to give some love to the companies that are trying to come up before you just trample all over them.
Right.
And Bellator right now is doing that, and I don't think Dana White needs to say anything right now. It's obvious that the UFC is huge, like I said, and they're everywhere. Toys R Us, I was shopping for my cousin's kid the other day, and the whole aisle was UFC toys and plushes, and I'm like, you guys don't need to do anything. Like, you're everywhere.
Right.
So this was just, that's why the low kick goes to Dana White. It was an unnecessary comment, but that's what he does.
And then too, like, competition, I think competition expands your sport. I mean, you can't be everything for everyone at all times.
Right.
And I don't think that there's anything wrong if you know that you're the bigger brother, and you know that if you wanted to, you could absorb the company or buy them out. I don't think that they're in a position right now to challenge the UFC, but you want to leave them alone long enough to, at the very least, be able to develop some talent for you,
right?
So that they can go through the scraping the bottom of the barrel and find some of those gems, and then once they have a few, maybe if you want to pick them off at that point, that makes some sense. But to sort of be throwing shots at this point, it might be a little too early to do that. But I like a good underdog story, so I hope Bellator is able to be successful.
Me too. So that is the low kick of the week. Dana White, we want to get you back up on that high kick. So hopefully we're going to look for some quotes next week and see if we can get you back on the high kick. So that is the low kick of the week. And going into our favorite segment, That's Some BullKick. And I'm going to have you introduce the That's Some BullKick segment this week.
Yes, sir. I know you pointed it out to me, but I kind of had some strong feelings about this, along with a few other people giving us a little kickback on Facebook. I'm going to get their names in a second. But, basically, Anderson Silva said on the UFC 162 media conference call that he is still looking and pursuing to fight boxing, not UFC, not MMA, but boxing. Roy Jones Jr. And just hearing that kind of got my blood boiling a little bit.
Too, man.
I'm a big Anderson Silva fan. I'm a big Roy Jones Jr. fan. I've probably been a boxing fan longer than I've been an MMA fan, but I think I know a little bit about both sports.
Right.
And there have been countless times that you've seen guys try to cross over into the other sport just because there are aspects of both, in MMA. So I think boxers feel like they can do it,
right? And
then I guess it's only natural that you have MMA guys who think they can, they box well enough to be able to go toe to toe and get into the ring with a fighter. I think it's one thing for Anderson to say that I can get into the ring and box, and maybe fight some amateur or something like that, or even somebody who's sort of bottom of the barrel, maybe in a 10 or 20 range in boxing. But to take on somebody who's a former Hall of Famer, or not a former Hall of Famer, current Hall of Famer, and a former boxer, former pound for pound greatest boxer alive, and he held that title for a long time.
Right.
Even though he's up there in age a little bit, he's still not that old. I don't know if he's I don't know if he's hit his 40s yet, but
maybe early 40s. Just
if anything, and I know he's still. If you told him that he was going to fight Anderson Silva, give him 3 months and he'd still be in incredible shape, he'd be able to get himself together. So, Anderson Silva, I know you're watching. That's some BullKick for saying that you could jump into the ring with Roy Jones, and regardless of how talented of a boxer you think that you are.
Yeah. You know what? I when I thought of that too, I always think this when, like you said, when people want to cross over to the other sport, do it. It's not going to work out for you. Like I don't have a big thing with it of because it doesn't even make any sense. It reminds me of when, like, I don't know if you're in your high school, but in mine it was always what's better, what's harder, soccer versus football.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the big argument growing up, and I never partook in those conversations because you couldn't even compare them. I'm like, this is a stupid argument because you can't even compare them. You bring a soccer player, put on football pads on him, and have him go practice, he's going to get lit up. You put a football player, take away his pads, and have him run up and down for 90 minutes, he's going to get tired. So it's uncomparable both ways. So is this. You put Anderson Silva in a boxing fight, he's going to get lit up by Roy Jones Jr.
Mm-hmm.
You tell Roy Jones Jr. to kick and grapple, Anderson Silva's going to kill him. So if Anderson Silva goes and tries to box with Roy Jones Jr., an off Roy Jones Jr. is still going to be better than 100%. And Anderson Silva is not a boxer. He's a Muay Thai fighter who boxes a few hours here and there as a part of the practice. So I don't know. This reminds me of too when training MMA and then you go to your boxing coach and then you spar the guys that are just solely boxers in there. It's different than when you're sparring your MMA partners. They're boxers, so they know nothing but their hands.
Right.
And for a guy to come over from MMA to boxing, you have to adjust your stance. Even your hands are different. I mean, you're not in the sprawl position. You have to remember to bring your hands up, and it's so different. And for the boxers, that's nothing. That's what they do. So for him to say that, I think it's some. I don't know if I think it's some BullKick. I think it's funny. Like, and for Anderson Silva, he's very confident. And when when he was talking on the call, and he just was so confident. And that's the part that I want to see him fight Roy Jones Jr.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I want to see Anderson Silva go in there and fight Roy Jones Jr. And I'll eat my words if he lights him up with his hands. And they both fight very similar. If you think about it, Roy Jones' hands are down all the time. He was the original guy that would stick his head out there. Anderson Silva does that too. So what? They both do that. They're gonna both have their hands down and they're gonna headbutt each other because they're both gonna be doing that little head shake thing at each other. But yeah, I think it's one of those things where I don't even get interested really sometimes when I hear one or the other trying to go either way, because whatever sport you do, that's the sport you're probably going to win in. And if somebody wants to come into your world, you're probably going to beat them. You go into their world, they're probably going to beat you. And it's going to be an awesome story headline if it doesn't happen. But I know it's not going to happen anytime soon because Dana White's not going to let it happen.
Right.
So that unless Roy Jones Jr. comes into the UFC, which I think after James Toney did that with Couture, Dana White said that was something that he wished he didn't do because that was more the super fight things that Dana was getting away from, or just So Silva's got a few fights left on his contract, so if this happens, it won't be for a few years, and by that point, I don't know. It's going to be one of those things where I think Anderson Silva, if he loses to Weidman coming up, and then he loses again, he gets a couple losses. Then they may do this fight because that's going to be
gimmick.
That's the only way I can see it happen. If Anderson Silva starts to go on the down a little bit and they need to kind of do something with his name, then other than that, I don't think this fight's going to happen. It's stupid. Anderson Silva needs to be concentrating on Chris Weidman coming up. A lot of people are clamoring for Weidman to win. I think he's going to do it. So for him to even talking about Roy Jones Jr. right now, it's like just concentrate on this next fight coming up.
Right, and then we had another example of a former boxer, trying to step into the MMA ring. We had Riddick Bowe over the weekend. Apparently, was in an MMA tournament in Thailand and got completely annihilated.
I see. Here's our section again. The shit segment of the week. Like, you go to Thailand and come on, like.
It's like walking into a lion's den. You got guys there who are just waiting to, I don't know if he thought he was a Karate Kid and was just going to enter a tournament and you know, take over and win all the way. You know, it wasn't going to go like that, regardless of what he was thinking. So it just goes to show you can't just cross over. You can't half-heartedly cross over, and you know, you're not training. You just think that, you know, because you were so good at this other sport that you're going to be able to come in and dominate this one. The only person that I'd have to give credit to for being able to do something like that is Brock Lesnar. You know, and those comparisons always come along. You know, wrestling and MMA. You know, wrestling's fake, all this stuff. Yeah, wrestling is fake, but it takes a high degree of athletic ability to be successful in that sport. And you actually saw someone who, you know, was in, you know, WWE and said, okay, I'm going to show people that I'm a real badass and go legit. And he went and he was legit and was a champ. So, really fast. So it just goes to show you that it is possible, but I think there's a lot of things that have to be going on in order to do that. You got to be in your prime. You have to almost abandon the other sport completely and train for this one. And I don't think that you can do that in a matter of months. It's going to take, you know, a year or two, and then you sort of come back and rebrand it as this, you know, MMA fighter or wrestler or boxer or, you know, whatever you're choosing to be. So it's going to take a high level of dedication. It just isn't something that you can do as a side act and think that you're going to be successful against somebody who's been doing it their entire life.
Exactly. So Anderson Silva does get the Some BullKick for this week, but I have a feeling that he is going to be on one of these high kick, low kicks for next week, as he's got his fight coming up pretty soon. So just to let you guys know, it is going to be the 4th of July next Thursday. So we will be shooting that next week sometime. I don't know if it's going to be on the 4th, but we will be sneaking in a show in the holiday week. I know a lot of people take some time off, but Kick and Make Up will not be. We will be
on a grind.
We'll be previewing the UFC Fight Week in Vegas, talking a little bit about some of the Fan Expo probably, and then maybe just give our predictions for UFC 162. It's a great card, and we'll keep all the card list till next week. Kind of leave you guys hanging. So that about wraps it up for this week's Kick and Make Up. Let me give you some of the handles: www.kickandmakeup.com. Archive shows, go check them out. Email us, kickandmakeup@gmail.com. Facebook page, go in right now, add yourself to the list. Twitter @Hybrid MMA is mine, @Kick and Makeup is the show's. Boom, that's all of them. I'm the American Hybrid, Nick Cunningham. Jeremy JD Dorsey, on my right, your left. Remember, don't solve it in the streets, take it to the cage and kick and make up.